Marcus Chen's vision blurred as crimson seeped through the makeshift bandages wrapped around his chest. The plasma
3 days
burns
since the
across
battle
his
ended in
torso
defeat.
felt like molten
3
metal
days since I
eating
watched
through
my
his
squad
flesh,
get
and
vaporized
each
by
breath
energy
sent
cannons.
lightning bolts of agony through his
The irony
collapsed
wasn't
lung.
lost on
Iced
him.
his back against the cold metal
Marcus
wall of
went
the
to die
abandoned
to the
Kepler
rest of the
Station
virus
medical
sword.
bay, listening
His
to the
QD and
distant
his common
rumble of
is by his
Zephyrian
Danish
warships
program.
patrolling the debris field
He never rest
outside.
issue.
3 days. 3
One
days
quick
since
burst,
the Battle of
and
Kepler's
it would all be
Edge
over.
had ended in
But
devastating
something in
defeat
my
for
gut
the
rebels
Terran
against us.
Colonial Defense Force. 3 days since he'd watched his entire squad get vaporized by Zephyrian energy cannons while defending the civilian evacuation transports. 3 days since he'd crawled into this forgotten corner of the station to die alone, just like the brass had always expected of humanity's soldiers. The irony wasn't lost on him. Marcus had spent 12 years fighting for humanity's right to exist in a galaxy that viewed them as nothing more than an aggressive virus. 12 years proving that humans could stand toe-to-toe with species that had mastered interstellar warfare when Earth was still figuring out agriculture. And now he was going to die in a medical bay that the Zephyrians hadn't even bothered to destroy, because to them, human lives weren't worth the ammunition. His communicator had died along with the station's power grid 2 days ago. The emergency beacon in his combat suit was damaged beyond repair, its components fused into slag by the same plasma blast that had nearly cooked him alive. Even if a rescue ship somehow made it through the Zephyrian blockade, they'd never find him in the labyrinthine depths of the station's medical complex. Marcus closed his eyes and let his head fall back against the wall. The smart thing would be to save himself the prolonged agony and activate the suicide charge in his armor. One quick burst, and it would all be over. Clean. Professional. The kind of death a soldier could be proud of. But something in his gut rebelled against the idea. Maybe it was stubborn human pride. Maybe it was the memory of his squad leader's last words. Make them remember us, Chen. Make them remember that humans don't go quiet into the dark. Or maybe it was just the sheer bloody-minded refusal to give up that had gotten his species this far against impossible odds. He opened his eyes and forced himself to focus on his surroundings. The medical bay was eerily pristine despite the battle damage throughout the rest of the station. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly red glow, and the air recycling system wheezed like an old man with emphysema. But the equipment was intact, and more importantly, the sealed storage units that lined the far wall appeared undamaged. Marcus had been a field medic before transferring to infantry. He knew enough about military medical facilities to recognize a blood bank when he saw one. If the storage unit still had power, there might be plasma expanders, synthetic blood substitutes, maybe even some real human blood stored for emergency transfusions. The journey across the room might as well have been a marathon. Every step sent fresh waves of agony through his damaged body, and twice he had to stop and lean against equipment cabinets to keep from passing out. His vision kept graying at the edges, and he could taste copper in his mouth. But he forced himself to keep moving, one agonizing step at a time. The storage units were still active, their status lights glowing amber in the dim emergency lighting. Marcus fumbled with the access panel, his numb fingers struggling to input his medical authorization codes. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the display flickered green, and the heavy door slid open with a soft hiss of escaping coolant. Inside, rows of sealed containers held various biological samples and medical supplies. Most were labeled in the standard Terran medical classification system, but some bore markings he didn't recognize. Probably alien specimens collected for research purposes. Kepler Station had been a joint scientific facility before the war, hosting researchers from a dozen different species. He found what he was looking for on the third shelf, 4 units of O-negative human blood, the universal donor type. The containers were intact, their temperature readings within acceptable parameters. It wasn't much, but combined with the synthetic plasma expanders in the adjacent cabinet, it might be enough to keep him alive long enough for a rescue team to find him. Marcus dragged himself to the nearest medical chair and began setting up an IV line with hands that shook from blood loss and adrenaline. The needle slipped twice before he managed to find a vein, and he had to bite down on his sleeve to keep from crying out as the metal pierced his dehydrated flesh. But finally, blessed relief flowed into his system as the synthetic plasma began replacing his lost blood volume. He was reaching for the first unit of human blood when he noticed the container next to it. Unlike the others, this one wasn't labeled in Terran medical notation. The writing was flowing and organic-looking, almost like Arabic calligraphy, but with an otherworldly elegance that made his eyes water if he stared too long. The container itself was different too, made of some kind of dark crystal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Marcus hesitated. Protocol dictated that he stick to human-compatible medical supplies. Alien blood could contain any number of compounds that might be toxic to human physiology, but something about the container drew his attention. Maybe it was the way the crystal seemed to pulse with its own inner light, or the strange warmth that radiated even through his gloves. He checked the environmental readings on the container's base. The internal temperature was several degrees warmer than human blood, and there were trace readings for compounds he didn't recognize. But the protein structure read out looked surprisingly similar to human hemoglobin, and there were no obvious toxicity warnings in the display. A rational man would have left it alone. A sensible soldier would have stuck to the known quantities and hoped for the best. But Marcus Chen had never been accused of being entirely rational, and 12 years of fighting impossible odds had taught him that sometimes you had to take crazy risks to survive. He was dying anyway. What did he have to lose? The alien blood was thick and dark, almost black in the red emergency lighting. It moved sluggishly through the IV tubing, and Marcus could swear he felt it the moment it entered his bloodstream. Not just the usual coolness of transfused blood, but something else. Something that made his skin tingle and his vision sharpen with unnatural clarity. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The crushing weight of blood loss that had been pressing down on him for days simply vanished. The constant ache in his chest faded to a manageable throb, and he could breathe without feeling like his lungs were full of broken glass. Even the deep plasma burns across his torso began to feel less like open wounds and more like old scars. Marcus stared at the IV line in amazement. No human medical technology worked this fast. Combat stims could give you a temporary boost, but they came with brutal crashes and dangerous side effects. This felt different. It felt like his body was actually healing, not just masking the damage with chemicals. He stood up carefully, testing his balance and range of motion. To his astonishment, he felt steadier than he had in days. The dizziness was gone, the weakness in his limbs was fading, and for the first time since the battle, he felt like he might actually survive this mess. But as the alien blood continued its work, Marcus began to notice other changes. His hearing seemed sharper, picking up sounds from deeper in the station that he shouldn't have been able to detect. The emergency lighting that had seemed dim before now provided perfect visibility, and he could make out details in the shadows that should have been invisible. Most unsettling of all, he could feel something new in his mind. Not thoughts exactly, but impressions. Emotions that felt foreign and ancient, tinged with a sadness so profound it made his chest ache. And underneath it all, hunger. Not for food or water, but for something he couldn't quite identify. The IV bag was empty now, all of the alien blood flowing through his system. Marcus disconnected the line and sealed the puncture wound with surgical gel, noting with surprise that his hands were completely steady. The shaking and weakness that had plagued him for days were completely gone. He caught sight of himself in a reflective medical cabinet and froze. His appearance hadn't changed dramatically, but there were subtle differences that made him look almost like a different person. His skin had taken on a pale, almost luminous quality, and there were faint dark circles under his eyes that hadn't been there before. But it was his eyes themselves that truly shocked him. They were still brown, but now they seemed to glow with their own inner light. In the dim emergency lighting, they were clearly visible from across the room, 2 amber points of illumination in his reflection. And when he moved his head, he caught glimpses of something else in their depths. Something predatory and inhuman. Marcus stepped back from the mirror, his heart racing. What had he done to himself? What kind of alien blood had he just pumped into his system? The rational part of his mind screamed that he needed to find a way to flush it out of his system before whatever was happening to him went too far. But the rest of him felt more alive than he had in years. His body was healing at an impossible rate, his senses were sharper than any humans had a right to be, and for the first time since the battle began, he felt like he had a real chance of survival. More importantly, he felt strong enough to fight back. The Zephyrians thought they had won, thought humanity would roll over and accept extinction, like so many species before them. But they had made one critical mistake. They had left him alive, and now he was something new. Something they had never encountered before. Marcus gathered his gear and checked his weapons. His pulse rifle had taken damage in the battle, but it was still functional. His sidearm was intact, and he had enough ammunition for a decent firefight. Not much against a Zephyrian patrol ship, but it would have to do. He made his way to the station's command center, moving through the darkened corridors with a confidence that surprised him. The shadows that would have hidden threats before seemed transparent now, and he could hear the slightest sounds from dozens of meters away. Whatever the alien blood had done to him, it had turned him into something far more dangerous than a standard human soldier. The command center was a wreck, its consoles shattered by Zephyrian energy weapons and its viewport cracked but still holding against the vacuum of space. But the emergency communication array was intact, buried deep in the station's armored core. If he could reach it and boost the signal strength, he might be able to get a message through to the Terran fleet. More importantly, he could warn them about what he had discovered. The alien blood, the changes it had caused, the possibilities it represented for humanity's future. If other humans could be enhanced the way he had been, it might tip the balance of the war. It might give his species the edge they needed, not just to survive, but to thrive in a galaxy that had written them off as irrelevant. Marcus began working on the communication console, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to repair the damaged circuits with surprising speed and precision. As he worked, he became aware of something else. The hunger he had been feeling was growing stronger, more focused. And he was beginning to understand what it was. He was hungry for Zephyrian blood. Not in some metaphorical sense, but with a literal, physical craving that made his mouth water and his newly enhanced senses sharpen to a razor's edge. The alien blood hadn't just healed him. It had awakened something predatory in his nature, something that saw the enemy not as opponents to be defeated, but as prey to be hunted. The irony was perfect. The Zephyrians had dismissed humanity as primitive and violent, too crude to survive in their elegant galactic civilization. They had no idea that they had just created something that made human violence look like a gentle suggestion. Marcus smiled, and in the reflection of the cracked viewport, he caught a glimpse of teeth that were just slightly too sharp to be entirely human. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about what happened when you tried to exterminate a species that refused to die quietly. The war had just taken a very interesting turn. The communication array crackled to life, just as Marcus detected the approaching patrol ship. His enhanced hearing picked up the subtle vibrations in the station's hull long before any human equipment would have registered the incoming vessel. Through the cracked viewport, he could see the sleek silver form of a Zephyrian scout ship, docking with the station's main airlock, its energy signature painting ghostly patterns across his retinas. 3 crew members, based on the life sign readings he was somehow able to interpret from the ship's emissions, standard Zephyrian patrol configuration. They would be expecting to find nothing but corpses and salvage, not a human who had become something entirely new. Marcus keyed in his authorization codes and began transmitting to the emergency frequency used by the Terran fleet. Static filled the speakers for several seconds before a familiar voice cut through the interference. "Unknown station, this is Admiral Sarah Voss aboard the TCS Defiance. Identify yourself immediately." Relief flooded through Marcus at the sound of his commanding officer's voice. Admiral Voss had been his CO during the siege of Proxima Station, and she was one of the few high-ranking officers who understood that humanity's survival depended on adaptation, not just firepower. "Admiral, this is Sergeant Marcus Chen, survivor of Kepler Station Garrison. I have critical intelligence regarding potential biological enhancements that could alter the course of this war." The pause that followed seemed to stretch forever. When Voss finally responded, her voice carried a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Chen, we thought your entire unit was KIA 3 days ago. What's your status?" Before Marcus could answer, he heard the distinctive hiss of the station's main airlock cycling. The Zephyrians had arrived, and they were conducting a systematic search of the facility. He had maybe 10 minutes before they reached the command center. "Admiral, I need you to listen carefully. I've discovered an alien blood sample that has remarkable regenerative properties. I used it to treat combat injuries that should have been fatal, and the results are beyond anything in our medical database. I'm transmitting my biometric readings now." He uploaded his current vital signs to the communication array, knowing that Voss would have medical experts analyze them immediately. What they would find should convince even the most skeptical observers that something extraordinary had happened. "Chen, these readings are impossible. Your cellular regeneration rate is off the charts, and your neurological activity suggests enhanced cognitive function. What exactly did you inject yourself with?" Marcus could hear footsteps in the corridors below, the soft padding of Zephyrian feet against metal deck plating. They moved with the fluid grace of their species, but to his enhanced senses, they sounded like thunder in the stillness of the dead station. "I'll have to explain later, Admiral. I have incoming hostiles, and I'm about to find out just how effective these enhancements are in combat. If I don't make it out, send a research team to examine the medical bay storage units. Look for containers marked with non-Terran notation. The answer to humanity's survival might be waiting in alien blood banks. Chen, do not engage the enemy. That's a direct order. Evade and escape if possible." Marcus almost smiled. If Voss knew what he was becoming, what he was capable of, she might give him very different orders. But there was no time to explain the hunger that was building in his chest, or the predatory instincts that were sharpening his focus to a lethal edge. "With respect, Admiral, I don't think evasion is an option anymore." Chen out. He cut the transmission and made his way toward the command center's secondary exit. The Zephyrians were 2 levels below and climbing, their energy weapons painting bright signatures in his enhanced vision. 3 of them, just as he had sensed earlier. 2 warriors in standard combat armor, and 1 in the more ornate gear of a patrol leader. Marcus had fought Zephyrians before, during the early stages of the war when humanity still thought conventional tactics might be enough. They were fast, strong, and equipped with personal shielding that could deflect most human weapons. Their plasma rifles could punch through Terran body armor like it was made of paper, and their reflexes were enhanced by combat drugs that pushed their nervous systems to superhuman levels. Under normal circumstances, a single human soldier facing 3 Zephyrians in close-quarters combat would have approximately 0 chance of survival, but Marcus was no longer operating under normal circumstances. He moved through the darkened corridors like a ghost, his enhanced senses tracking the aliens' progress through the station with perfect clarity. They were systematic in their search, checking each compartment thoroughly before moving to the next. Professional, methodical, confident in their superiority. That confidence was about to become a serious liability. Marcus positioned himself in a maintenance shaft that ran parallel to the main corridor, watching through a ventilation grate as the patrol approached. The lead Zephyrian was tall even by the standards of his species, nearly 7 feet of lean muscle and predatory grace. His skin had the characteristic blue-silver coloration that marked him as a member of the warrior caste, and the energy patterns that flowed across his armor suggested he was carrying weapons that could level a small building. The 2 subordinates flanked him in a standard sweep formation, their plasma rifles charged and ready. They moved with the casual efficiency of soldiers who had cleared countless derelict facilities, expecting nothing more dangerous than the occasional automated defense system. They had no idea they were being hunted by something that was learning to enjoy the experience. Marcus waited until they were directly below his position before he struck. The maintenance shaft's access panel was held in place by standard bolts that his enhanced strength could snap like twigs. He dropped into the corridor behind the trailing Zephyrian with perfect silence, his movements fluid and predatory. The alien's enhanced reflexes were impressive, but they weren't fast enough. Marcus's hand closed around the creature's throat before it could cry out, and his suddenly powerful fingers crushed the delicate cartilage with a wet crunch. The Zephyrian's eyes went wide with shock and pain as it clawed frantically at Marcus's grip, but its struggles only lasted seconds before it went limp. The hunger that had been building in Marcus's chest suddenly exploded into desperate need. Without conscious thought, he bit down on the alien's throat, his newly sharpened teeth finding the major arteries with instinctive precision. The Zephyrian's blood was hot and metallic, tasting of copper and electricity, and as it flowed into his system, Marcus felt a surge of energy that made his previous enhancement pale in comparison. His vision sharpened to the point where he could see individual dust motes floating in the air. His hearing became so acute that he could track the heartbeats of the other 2 aliens despite the soundproofing between them. Most remarkably, he found himself understanding the Zephyrian language as if he had spoken it all his life, picking up fragments of their tactical communications through his enhanced senses. The lead alien was calling for his subordinate to check in. When no response came, both remaining Zephyrians shifted to combat formation, their weapons powering up with distinctive harmonic whines. Marcus finished draining the first alien and let the desiccated corpse fall to the deck. He felt stronger than ever before, his enhanced muscles humming with barely contained power. But more than that, he felt smarter, more focused, as if the alien blood was enhancing not just his physical capabilities, but his cognitive functions as well. He picked up the dead Zephyrian's plasma rifle and checked its charge level. 70% power, enough for maybe 20 shots. The weapon felt perfectly balanced in his hands, despite being designed for alien physiology, and somehow he understood its operation completely, as if the knowledge had been transmitted along with the blood. The remaining 2 aliens were moving toward his position, their formation tight and professional. But Marcus could track their every movement through the bulkheads, their footsteps ringing like bells in his enhanced hearing. They thought they were hunting a desperate human survivor. They had no idea they were walking into the lair of an apex predator. Marcus stepped around the corner and opened fire before either alien could react. His first shot took the subordinate in the chest, burning through its personal shielding like it wasn't there. The creature went down with a strangled cry, its armor smoking from the plasma burn. The patrol leader was faster, diving for cover behind a structural support beam while returning fire. His plasma bolts lit up the corridor with crackling energy, but Marcus was already moving, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dance between the deadly beams with impossible grace. He came around the alien's cover from an angle that should have been impossible for a human to achieve, his body moving in ways that defied conventional anatomy. The Zephyrian's eyes went wide with shock as Marcus closed the distance in a single bound, covering nearly 20 feet in a leap that would have shattered human bones. The alien tried to bring his weapon around, but Marcus batted it aside with casual strength that crumpled the plasma rifle's barrel like aluminum foil. Before the creature could draw its sidearm, Marcus had him by the throat, lifting the 7-foot alien off the deck with one hand. "You made a mistake," Marcus said in perfect Zephyrian, his voice carrying harmonics that shouldn't have been possible with human vocal cords. "You assumed humanity would die quietly." The alien's response was a mixture of clicks and harmonic tones that roughly translated to desperate pleas for mercy. But Marcus was beyond mercy now. The hunger that drove him demanded satisfaction, and something deeper than conscious thought told him that each alien he consumed would make him stronger, smarter, more capable of protecting his species. He drained the patrol leader slowly, savoring the way the creature's enhanced blood mixed with his own transformed physiology. With each swallow, he felt his understanding of Zephyrian technology and tactics expand. Their ship designs, their weapons technology, their strategic thinking, all of it became as familiar to him as his own memories. When he finished, Marcus stood among the corpses and marveled at what he had become. 3 elite Zephyrian warriors, creatures that could have wiped out an entire human squad, had fallen to him without landing a single effective blow, and he wasn't even breathing hard. But it was the knowledge that truly amazed him. He understood now that the blood he had consumed in the medical bay hadn't come from just any alien. It had belonged to something called a sanguine, an ancient species that had mastered biological enhancement eons before the Zephyrians had learned to shape metal. The sanguines were extinct now, hunted to extinction by a coalition of younger species who feared their power. All except for one. A female researcher who had somehow ended up on Kepler Station, probably as part of the Joint Scientific Program. She had been studying human biology when the war began, trying to understand what made humanity so uniquely adaptive among the galaxy's species, and she had left behind the key to humanity's evolution. Marcus made his way back to the command center and re-established contact with Admiral Voss. The transmission was clearer now, his enhanced understanding of the station's systems allowing him to boost the signal beyond normal parameters. "Admiral, this is Chen. The patrol has been neutralized." "Neutralized? Chen, what's your tactical situation? How did a wounded soldier take out an entire Zephyrian patrol?" Marcus looked at his reflection in the cracked viewport and smiled. His teeth were definitely sharper now, and his eyes glowed with an inner fire that would have been impossible to miss. But more importantly, his mind was racing with possibilities that hadn't existed an hour earlier. "Admiral, I need you to authorize an immediate research mission to Kepler Station. What I've discovered here could change everything. We're not just talking about enhanced soldiers. We're talking about the evolution of the entire human species." "Chen, you're not making sense. Your biometric readings are showing changes that shouldn't be possible with any known medical technology." "What exactly happened to you?" Marcus thought about how to explain what he had become. How could he tell his commanding officer that he had consumed alien blood and gained abilities that made him a perfect predator? How could he make her understand that the war had just shifted from humanity's desperate struggle for survival to something far more interesting? "Admiral, I need you to trust me. Send a team to collect the blood samples in the medical bay and make sure they're prepared for something beyond current human understanding. The Zephyrians think they're fighting primitive humans. They have no idea what we're about to become." "Chen! I'm reading massive energy signatures from your location. Are you under attack?" Marcus looked out the viewport and saw what had triggered the sensors. More Zephyrian ships were approaching, drawn by the lack of response from their patrol. But instead of feeling concern or fear, Marcus felt only anticipation. "No, Admiral. I'm not under attack. I'm hunting." He cut the transmission and made his way toward the docking bay where the patrol ship was moored. The approaching vessels would have crews of 12 to 15 each, elite soldiers equipped with the best weapons and armor their species could provide. They thought they were coming to investigate a minor incident on a dead human station. What they would find instead was something that would haunt their species' nightmares for generations to come. Marcus Chen, the last survivor of Kepler Station, was about to become the first of a new kind of human. And the galaxy was about to learn that sometimes, when you try to destroy a species, you only make it stronger. The hunt was just beginning. Admiral Sarah Voss stared at the biometric data streaming across her command console, her coffee growing cold as the implications of what she was seeing sank in. The readings from Sergeant Chen were impossible by every standard of human physiology she knew. His cellular regeneration rate had increased by 4,000%. His neurological activity suggested cognitive enhancement on a scale that should have caused fatal seizures. And his blood chemistry showed compounds that didn't exist in any known human medical database. Medical Officer Morrison to the bridge, Priority 1, she called into her comm unit. Dr. Helena Morrison was the fleet's chief xenobiologist, one of the few people qualified to interpret alien biological data. If anyone could make sense of Chen's readings, it would be her. Morrison arrived within minutes, her lab coat still bearing traces of the research she'd been conducting on captured Zephyrian technology. She took one look at the biometric display and went pale. "Sarah, please tell me this is some kind of equipment malfunction." "I wish I could." "That data is coming from Sergeant Marcus Chen, last survivor of the Kepler Station garrison. He claims to have discovered alien blood samples that have enhanced his physical capabilities beyond human norms." Morrison pulled up a chair and began analyzing the data stream, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "These readings suggest massive genetic restructuring at the cellular level. Enhanced protein synthesis, accelerated metabolic processes, neurological changes that should be killing him. But instead of dying, he's becoming something entirely different." "Different how?" "Look at these enzyme readings. His body is producing compounds I've never seen before, but they're clearly designed to process alien proteins and genetic material. And his neural activity patterns suggest he's integrating alien memories and knowledge at a rate that defies everything we know about human cognition." Admiral Voss felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying he's no longer human?" "I'm saying he's becoming something more than human, something that can survive and adapt to alien biological systems in ways we never thought possible." Morrison paused, her expression growing thoughtful. "Sarah, do you remember the reports from the early contact missions? The species that the Galactic Council classified as extinct? You mean the Sanguines, the ones they claimed were too dangerous to allow survival?" "Exactly. They were described as a species that could integrate the biological characteristics of other races through direct consumption of genetic material. The Council said they were eliminated because they represented an existential threat to galactic stability." Admiral Voss began to understand the implications. "And do you think Chen has somehow acquired sanguine genetic material?" "It's the only explanation that fits the data. Somehow he's undergone a transformation that's turned him into something resembling the most feared species in galactic history." Before Voss could respond, her tactical officer called out from across the bridge, "Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal from the Zephyrian patrol fleet near Kepler Station. Multiple ships reporting casualties and system failures. Put it on speakers." The transmission that filled the bridge was a mixture of panicked Zephyrian voices overlaying each other in harmonics that suggested extreme distress. Morrison activated the translation software, and within seconds the bridge crew could understand what they were hearing. "Unknown hostile aboard station Kepler 7. Crew of patrol vessel Starwind confirmed dead. Energy signatures unlike any human technology. Request immediate military response." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Admiral," Morrison said quietly, "I think we need to seriously consider that Sergeant Chen is no longer just a survivor. He may have become something that can single-handedly engage Zephyrian military assets." Admiral Voss stared at the tactical display showing the Kepler system. 3 Zephyrian patrol ships had gone silent in the last hour, and their life support readings had dropped to 0. Chen had somehow eliminated entire crews of elite alien soldiers, something that should have been impossible for any individual human. "Get me a secure channel to Earth Command, Priority Alpha classification, and prepare the Science Division for immediate deployment to Kepler Station. Sarah, if Chen really has undergone sanguine transformation, we need to be extremely careful about how we handle this. The historical records suggest that sanguines were capable of exponential power growth through biological consumption. If he continues to hunt Zephyrian patrols, he could become powerful enough to affect the entire war," Voss finished. "But the question is, will he still be on our side when that happens?" Meanwhile, aboard Kepler Station, Marcus Chen was discovering just how addictive the process of enhancement could become. He had drained the crews of 2 more patrol ships, and each feeding had brought new capabilities. He could now interface directly with Zephyrian technology through physical contact, extracting information from their databases as easily as drinking their blood. What he learned painted a picture of galactic politics that was far more complex than humanity had realized. The Zephyrians weren't just another aggressive species expanding their territory. They were the military arm of something called the Hegemony Council, a coalition of ancient races that maintained galactic stability by preventing the emergence of potential threats. Humanity had been classified as a Code 7 threat, a species with the potential for rapid technological and biological adaptation that could disrupt the established order. The war wasn't about territory or resources. It was about preventing humans from becoming something that could challenge the Council's authority. And they were absolutely right to be afraid. Marcus could feel the changes accelerating in his body as the alien genetic material integrated with his human DNA. He was faster, stronger, and smarter than he had been even hours earlier. But more importantly, he was beginning to understand the true potential of what he was becoming. The Sanguines hadn't been eliminated because they were evil or destructive. They had been destroyed because they represented evolution itself, the ability to adapt and grow beyond the limitations that bound other species. And now that power lived in human form, in a species that had already proven its ability to survive against impossible odds. Marcus made his way to the station's research laboratories, following genetic memories inherited from the sanguine blood he had consumed. The alien researcher who had provided the blood sample had been conducting extensive studies on human physiology, trying to understand the mechanisms that made humanity so uniquely adaptable. What she had discovered would have revolutionized galactic biology if she had lived to publish her findings. Marcus found her research notes stored in quantum encryption that would have taken human computers years to decode, but his enhanced cognitive abilities allowed him to break the encryption in minutes, absorbing terabytes of data as fast as he could process it. The truth was staggering. Humans weren't just another species that had evolved on an isolated world. They were the descendants of an ancient genetic experiment, created by the original sanguine civilization as a fail-safe against their own extinction. Human DNA contained dormant sanguine genetic sequences that could be activated under the right circumstances. The researcher had been trying to unlock those sequences when the war began. She had been killed before she could complete her work, but her blood samples contained the activation triggers that could awaken humanity's true potential. Marcus wasn't just becoming something new. He was becoming what humans had always been meant to be. He activated the station's long-range communication array and began transmitting the research data to Admiral Voss. But he encoded it in a way that would require sanguine-enhanced cognitive abilities to fully decode. He was no longer entirely sure that baseline humans could be trusted with this information. Admiral Voss, this is Chen. I'm transmitting critical intelligence regarding human genetic heritage and the true nature of the galactic conflict. The data will require enhanced processing capabilities to fully decode, but I believe you'll find it enlightening. Chen, your biometric readings suggest you've undergone additional physiological changes in the last hour. What's your current status? Marcus looked at his reflection in a laboratory monitor and smiled. His appearance had shifted again, becoming more refined and predatory. His skin had taken on a pale luminescence that seemed to glow with inner fire, and his eyes now held depths that seemed to contain starlight. I'm becoming what humanity was always meant to be, Admiral, and I'm learning that this war is far bigger than we realized. The Zephyrians are just foot soldiers for a galactic authority that has been suppressing species evolution for millennia. Chen, I need you to return to base for medical evaluation. We don't know the long-term effects of what you've undergone. Marcus laughed, a sound that carried harmonics no human throat should have been able to produce. Admiral, with respect, medical evaluation isn't going to help anyone understand what I've become, but I can offer you something better. I can offer humanity the chance to evolve beyond the limitations that have kept us trapped in this corner of the galaxy. What are you proposing? Send volunteers, Admiral. Send soldiers who are willing to undergo the same transformation I have. Let them drink sanguine blood and become what our species was designed to be. The Hegemony Council thinks they're fighting primitive humans. Let's show them what evolved humans are capable of. The silence that followed stretched for nearly a full minute. When Admiral Voss finally responded, her voice carried the weight of someone making a decision that would alter the course of history. Chen, I'm authorizing a research mission to Kepler Station. We'll bring a volunteer medical team and see if your transformation can be safely replicated, but I want you to understand the magnitude of what you're suggesting. If we go down this path, there may be no turning back. Marcus nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Admiral, the Hegemony Council made that decision for us the moment they classified humanity as a threat to be eliminated. Now we have the chance to become a threat worth fearing. He cut the transmission and began preparing the medical bay for visitors. The first generation of enhanced humans would need proper facilities for their transformation, and he wanted to ensure the process went smoothly. But as he worked, Marcus became aware of a new presence in the system. Ships were approaching Kepler Station, but they weren't Terran vessels. The energy signatures were unlike anything in human databases, older and more powerful than even Zephyrian technology. The Hegemony Council had apparently decided that the situation required direct intervention. They were sending something that hadn't been seen in the galaxy for over 1,000 years. A cleansing fleet, designed to sterilize entire systems when the threat they contained became too great to contain. Marcus smiled and began powering up the station's defensive systems. He had been hoping for a chance to test his new capabilities against something more challenging than patrol ships. The galaxy was about to see what happened when you tried to cleanse a species that refused to be erased from existence, and Marcus Chen, the first of the new humans, was very much looking forward to the lesson. The hegemony cleansing fleet materialized at the edge of the Kepler system like dark stars bleeding into reality. 7 massive vessels, each one larger than Earth's moon, their hulls forged from metals that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Marcus watched them through the station's enhanced sensors, his transformed consciousness processing their energy signatures with growing fascination. These weren't the sleek, efficient designs of Zephyrian military architecture. These ships were ancient, their construction predating current galactic civilization by millennia. But they hummed with power that made the most advanced human technology look like stone tools in comparison. "Impressive," Marcus murmured, his enhanced vocal cords producing harmonics that resonated through the station's metal structure. "They're bringing the old weapons out of storage." He interfaced directly with the station's communication array, his consciousness merging with the quantum processors in ways that would have been impossible for baseline human neurology. The data streams flowing through galactic communication networks were as clear to him as spoken words, and he could monitor hegemony transmissions with perfect clarity. What he heard confirmed his worst suspicions about the scope of the conflict humanity had stumbled into. "Hegemony Command, this is Fleet Overseer Kethmore aboard the vessel Eternal Judgment. We have arrived at the contaminated system and are beginning sterilization protocols." "Acknowledged, Fleet Overseer. Intelligence suggests that contamination has reached Class 9 severity. Full planetary sterilization authorized for any world showing signs of sanguine integration." Marcus felt his enhanced metabolism spike with anger. They weren't just planning to destroy the station or eliminate him. They intended to sterilize every planet in the system that might have been exposed to sanguine genetic material. Billions of potential human lives, wiped out to prevent the emergence of an evolved species. He opened a communication channel to Admiral Voss, encoding his transmission through quantum entanglement protocols that would make it impossible for the hegemony to intercept. "Admiral, this is Chen. We have a situation that requires immediate response." "Chen, I'm reading massive energy signatures in your system. What's your tactical assessment?" 7 hegemony capital ships have just arrived with orders to sterilize any world that might contain sanguine genetic material. "They're not just targeting me, Admiral. They're planning to eliminate every human colony that could potentially undergo enhancement." The silence that followed was filled with the weight of galactic war. When Voss finally responded, her voice carried the cold determination that had made her one of humanity's most effective military commanders. "Chen, the volunteer medical team is already en route to your position, ETA 4 hours. Can you hold out until then?" Marcus smiled, his enhanced senses already tracking the approach vectors of hegemony assault craft. "Admiral, I don't think holding out is the appropriate tactical response anymore. These ships represent everything the galaxy has used to suppress species evolution for thousands of years. I think it's time to demonstrate that evolution doesn't ask permission. Chen, those are capital ships with firepower that could crack planets. Even with your enhancements, engaging them directly would be suicide." "Would it?" Marcus began interfacing with the station's defensive systems, his consciousness spreading through the network like digital fire. "Admiral, I've been integrating Zephyrian technology and genetic knowledge for hours now. Each enhancement has made me more capable of processing and adapting alien systems. I'm no longer operating under human limitations." Through the station's sensors, he could see the first wave of hegemony assault craft launching from their capital ships, hundreds of them, each one crewed by elite soldiers from species that had served the Council for millennia. They thought they were dealing with a single, enhanced human who had gotten lucky against patrol ships. They had no idea they were about to face something that represented millions of years of evolutionary potential compressed into hours of enhancement. Marcus made his way to the station's primary weapons control center, passing through corridors lined with the desiccated remains of Zephyrian crews. His enhanced metabolism had processed their biological materials so efficiently that nothing remained but empty armor and weapons. The weapons control center had been designed by human engineers, but Marcus could see ways to integrate it with alien technology that would increase its effectiveness exponentially. His hands moved across the control interfaces with inhuman speed, his consciousness directly interfacing with quantum processors as he began rebuilding the station's defensive capabilities. Kepler Station had originally been designed as a research facility, not a military installation. But it contained manufacturing facilities that could produce advanced technology, and those facilities were about to be repurposed in ways their designers had never imagined. Marcus began fabricating new weapons using principles derived from sanguine genetic memories, technologies that merged biological and mechanical systems into weapons that could adapt and evolve during combat. the manufacturing bays filled with the sound of quantum forges creating materials that shouldn't have been possible with current human science. Meanwhile, the first wave of hegemony assault craft was approaching the station's outer defenses. Marcus watched them through sensors that could now perceive electromagnetic spectra invisible to human eyes, tracking their formations and energy signatures with perfect clarity. Each craft carried 12 soldiers from different council species, creating assault teams with complementary abilities and tactical specializations. Cathan shock troops with personal energy shields and plasma weapons. Veltar assassins capable of limited quantum teleportation. Morden heavy infantry with armor that could withstand direct nuclear strikes. Under normal circumstances, even a single assault craft could have overwhelmed the station's defenses and killed every human aboard. But these were no longer normal circumstances. Marcus activated the new weapons systems he had constructed, devices that combined human engineering with alien biotechnology and sanguine adaptive capabilities. Energy beams that could analyze and counter enemy defenses in real time lanced out from the station, striking the assault craft with precision that defied conventional targeting systems. The results were spectacular. The hegemony craft, designed to resist conventional weapons, found themselves facing energy patterns that adapted to their defensive measures faster than their systems could compensate. Ships that had survived battles against entire planetary defense networks were disabled or destroyed by a single sustained burst from Marcus's hybrid weapons. But the most remarkable aspect wasn't the weapons themselves. It was the speed at which Marcus was processing tactical data and adapting his strategies. His enhanced consciousness was operating on multiple levels simultaneously, analyzing enemy movements, calculating firing solutions, and redesigning weapon systems in real time. Through the station's communication array, he could hear the panic spreading through hegemony command channels. "Fleet Overseer, we've lost contact with the first assault wave. Sensors are detecting energy signatures that don't match any known human technology." Impossible. Human technology is centuries behind Council standards. What could they have developed that our sensors can't identify? Marcus opened a direct communication channel to the Hegemony flagship, his enhanced vocal cords producing the harmonic frequencies used by Council species for formal communication. Hegemony Fleet Overseer, Kethmore, this is the enhanced human designation Marcus Chen. I believe we should discuss the parameters of your sterilization mission. The silence that followed stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Kethmore finally responded, his voice carried the harmonic patterns of shock and disbelief. "Human designation Chen, you will surrender for immediate termination. Your existence represents a Class 9 contamination event that threatens galactic stability. Fleet Overseer, I appreciate your concern for galactic stability, but I think you'll find that stability is about to be redefined in terms that favor species capable of adaptation over those committed to stagnation." Marcus launched the second wave of his defensive systems, weapons that incorporated lessons learned from the destruction of the first assault wave. These were even more advanced, devices that could evolve their attack patterns during combat and share tactical data through quantum entanglement networks. The results were devastating for the hegemony forces. Capital ships that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia found themselves facing weapons that could adapt to their defenses faster than their crews could implement countermeasures. Energy shields that should have been impenetrable were bypassed by weapons that evolved new frequencies in microseconds. But Marcus wasn't content with merely defending the station. His enhanced consciousness had identified weaknesses in hegemony ship design that could be exploited using the manufacturing facilities at his disposal. He began constructing mobile weapons platforms, semi-autonomous devices that could attach themselves to enemy vessels and begin consuming their hull materials to fuel self-replication. The hegemony crews watched in horror as their ships began dissolving from the inside out. Vessels that had been built to last for millennia were reduced to expanding clouds of constituent atoms in minutes. "Fleet Overseer," Marcus transmitted, his voice carrying harmonics of amusement that no human throat should have been able to produce. "I believe this would be an excellent time to discuss terms for your withdrawal from human space. Human designation Chen, what you have become represents an existential threat to every species in the galaxy. The Hegemony Council will deploy whatever resources are necessary to contain this contamination. Fleet Overseer, you've already deployed your cleansing fleet, and it's currently being consumed by weapons that learn from every attack you make against them. Perhaps it's time to consider that the age of hegemony dominance is coming to an end. Through the quantum communication networks, Marcus could detect emergency transmissions flowing between the remaining hegemony ships and their command structure. They were calling for reinforcements, requesting the deployment of weapons that had been sealed away for millennia. But they were also reporting something that Marcus found far more interesting. The destruction of their assault craft had released genetic material into space, and that material was being recovered and analyzed by his adaptive weapon systems. Each hegemony soldier killed was making his defensive network smarter and more capable. "Admiral Voss," Marcus transmitted on the encrypted human channel, "the hegemony is about to escalate this conflict beyond anything they've used in recorded galactic history. I recommend accelerating the timeline for human enhancement. We're going to need evolved soldiers sooner than planned." "Chen, your tactical reports suggest you're engaging capital ships with weapons that shouldn't exist. How is this possible?" Marcus paused in his construction of new weapons platforms to consider how to explain what he had become. His consciousness now operated on levels that baseline human cognition couldn't process, integrating knowledge from dozens of species and temporal perspectives that spanned millennia. "Admiral, I'm no longer limited by human technological development timeframes. I'm adapting and evolving in real time using principles that the galaxy's dominant species have spent thousands of years trying to suppress. Every enemy I defeat makes me stronger and smarter. Every weapon they deploy against me becomes a component I can integrate into more advanced systems. Chen, you're describing capabilities that sound like technological singularity accelerated to an impossible degree." "Exactly, Admiral. And this is just the beginning. The volunteer team you're sending will undergo transformations that make my current capabilities look primitive. Humanity isn't just going to survive this war. We're going to transcend it." Marcus returned his attention to the hegemony fleet, noting with satisfaction that 2 more capital ships had been disabled by his evolving weapon systems. The fleet overseer was now calling for immediate withdrawal while simultaneously requesting authorization to deploy planet-killing weapons. But Marcus had detected something else in their transmissions: fear. For the first time in galactic history, the Hegemony Council was confronting a threat that grew stronger every time they tried to destroy it. "Fleet Overseer," Marcus transmitted, "I'm prepared to offer terms for your safe withdrawal from human space. Human designation Chen, the Hegemony Council does not negotiate with contamination events. Fleet Overseer, in approximately 18 minutes, my adaptive weapons will have analyzed enough of your technology to begin replicating your capital ships using materials from the system. In 36 minutes, I'll have a fleet of enhanced vessels that operate on principles your species can't comprehend. Perhaps you should reconsider your negotiation policies." The pause that followed was filled with the electromagnetic screams of dying hegemony technology. When Kethmore finally responded, his harmonic patterns carried the resonance of defeat. "What are your terms, enhanced human?" Marcus smiled, his consciousness already designing the weapons that would escort humanity into a new age of galactic dominance. "Simple, Fleet Overseer. Recognition of human sovereign space and an immediate cessation of all hegemony interference in human evolution. In exchange, I'll allow your remaining ships to withdraw and carry a message to the Council." "What message?" "That the age of suppressed evolution is over. The galaxy now belongs to those willing to adapt." 3 months after the Battle of Kepler Station, Admiral Sarah Voss stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Titan-class battleship Ascendant, watching as the first generation of enhanced humans completed their final training exercises in the void of space. What she saw would have been impossible to believe if she hadn't witnessed the transformation process herself. 24 figures moved through the vacuum without environmental suits, their enhanced physiology having adapted to survive in conditions that would kill baseline humans in seconds. They wielded weapons that had been grown rather than manufactured, living technology that bonded with their enhanced nervous systems and evolved in response to tactical requirements. But it was their coordination that truly amazed her. The enhanced humans moved as a single organism, sharing information through quantum entanglement networks that operated at the cellular level. When one detected a threat, all 24 responded instantaneously, their collective consciousness processing tactical data at speeds that made AI systems look sluggish. Remarkable, isn't it? Admiral Voss turned to see Marcus Chen approaching, though she had to remind herself that the figure beside her was only superficially the same man she had known. The transformation had continued over the past months, reshaping him into something that retained human appearance while incorporating capabilities that defied every limit of terrestrial biology. His skin held the pale luminescence of starlight, and his eyes contained depths that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. But it was his presence that truly marked him as something beyond human. The air around him hummed with barely contained energy, and electronics responded to his proximity without conscious direction. "Marcus, the integration reports suggest the enhanced humans are developing capabilities we didn't anticipate. Group consciousness, reality manipulation at the quantum level, technology that responds to thought rather than physical interface. Evolution doesn't ask permission, Admiral, Marcus replied, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond normal space. Each generation of enhanced humans develops capabilities that exceed the previous one. We're not just adapting to galactic conditions, we're transcending them. Through the observation deck's reinforced transparisteel, they could see the latest generation of Terran vessels completing their shakedown cruises. Ships that had been grown rather than built, their hulls incorporating sanguine biotechnology with human engineering to create vessels that could heal from battle damage and adapt to new threats in real time. The largest of them was the Genesis, Marcus's personal command ship, a kilometer-long fusion of living metal and quantum consciousness that served as the flagship for humanity's new spaceborne civilization. Its weapon systems could evolve new attack patterns faster than enemy defenses could adapt, and its computational core operated on principles that merged organic neural networks with quantum processors. The Hegemony Council has been unusually quiet since Kepler's station, Admiral Voss noted. Our intelligence suggests they're trying to develop new containment strategies, but they're also dealing with uprisings among their subject species. Marcus smiled, an expression that held depths of satisfaction that went beyond normal human emotion. They're beginning to understand what we represented from the beginning, Admiral. Not just another aggressive species, but the end of their age of control. Other species have started to question why they should accept limitations imposed by an authority that can be defeated by evolved humans. The reports from the frontier colonies suggest similar transformations are occurring throughout human space. Volunteers seeking enhancement, children born with capabilities that exceed baseline human norms, entire populations undergoing genetic awakening. Exactly as it should be. Humanity was designed to be the catalyst for galactic evolution. The Sanguines created us as their successors, a species capable of integrating and enhancing the biological potential of every other race we encounter. Admiral Voss felt a mixture of pride and apprehension as she considered what humanity had become. The war with the Zephyrians had ended within weeks of the Battle of Kepler Station, not through military defeat, but through the simple recognition that resistance was futile. Enhanced humans could outfight, outthink, and outadapt any conventional military force. But the transformation had gone far beyond military applications. Enhanced humans were rewriting the fundamental principles of technology, biology, and consciousness itself. They were creating art that operated in dimensions baseline humans couldn't perceive, developing scientific theories that unified concepts across multiple universal paradigms, and establishing societies that functioned on principles of collective consciousness and shared evolution. Marcus, there's something I need to discuss with you. Earth Command has received communications from species in the outer galactic rim. They're requesting assistance in developing their own enhancement protocols. And how does Earth Command feel about sharing sanguine genetic material with alien species? They're divided. Some see it as an opportunity to build alliances. Others worry about creating potential competitors for enhanced humans. Marcus turned his attention to the tactical display that showed the current distribution of enhanced human populations throughout the galaxy. Thousands of worlds now hosted communities of evolved humans, each one serving as a center for technological and biological advancement that surpassed anything the galaxy had seen in millions of years. Admiral, the Hegemony Council maintained galactic stability by preventing any species from achieving their full evolutionary potential. We've demonstrated that approach was fundamentally flawed. True stability comes from enabling evolution, not suppressing it. So you support sharing enhancement technology with alien species? I support the principle that brought us this far: adaptation, evolution, and the refusal to accept artificial limitations. If other species can benefit from sanguine integration, they should have that opportunity. Those that can adapt will find their own paths forward or fall behind. As they spoke, the communication array began receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Reports of hegemony client species declaring independence, requests for enhanced human assistance in developing new technologies, and intelligence suggesting that the Council itself was fragmenting as member species began questioning the wisdom of resisting evolutionary change. Admiral, Marcus continued, the transformation we've undergone isn't just about human survival. It's about creating a galaxy where every species can reach its maximum potential. The age of artificial scarcity and imposed limitations is ending. Through the ship's quantum consciousness network, Marcus became aware of new developments occurring in real time across human space. Enhanced humans were establishing contact with previously unknown alien civilizations, offering them opportunities to participate in the evolutionary renaissance that was reshaping galactic civilization. Some species embraced the transformation eagerly, undergoing enhancement processes that unlocked capabilities they had never imagined. Others chose different paths, developing technologies and social systems that complemented enhanced human capabilities without requiring biological modification. But all of them were free to make those choices without interference from a galactic authority that claimed to know what was best for every species in existence. Admiral, I'm receiving reports that several former hegemony client species have successfully completed their own enhancement programs. The Veltar have developed quantum consciousness capabilities that exceed even our current abilities. The Mordun have created biotechnology that can transform entire worlds into living ecosystems. And the hegemony's response? They're trying to negotiate. After 3 million years of imposing their will through superior firepower, they're discovering that evolution doesn't respect traditional power structures. Admiral Voss watched as the enhanced humans completed their training exercise and began returning to their ships. Each one represented capabilities that would have seemed like magic to the woman she had been 6 months earlier. But more than that, they represented hope for a future where humanity wouldn't just survive among the stars, but thrive as the catalyst for a new age of galactic civilization. Marcus, what do you see as humanity's role in whatever comes next? Marcus's consciousness expanded through the ship's network, connecting with enhanced humans across the galaxy and processing information streams that encompassed the activities of billions of beings across thousands of worlds. When he responded, his voice carried the harmonics of collective wisdom drawn from an entire evolved species. We're the bridge, Admiral. Between what the galaxy was and what it can become. The Sanguines designed us to carry their legacy forward, but they also gave us the ability to exceed their own achievements. We're not just enhanced humans anymore. We're the first generation of a new form of consciousness that can guide galactic evolution toward possibilities that no single species could achieve alone. And the Hegemony Council? What happens to them? They can adapt or become irrelevant. Their choice. Marcus paused, his consciousness processing data from across the galaxy. Actually, I'm receiving communications suggesting that several council species are requesting meetings to discuss integration into the new galactic paradigm. Admiral Voss smiled, remembering the desperate soldier who had crawled into a medical bay 3 months earlier, expecting to die alone and forgotten. That man had become something that transcended every limitation the galaxy had tried to impose on humanity, and in doing so had opened possibilities that would reshape civilization itself. Admiral, Marcus continued, there's something else. The quantum consciousness networks we've established are detecting signals from beyond the galactic rim. We're not the only ones who've achieved this level of evolution. There are other enhanced species out there, civilizations that transcended their original biological limitations millennia ago. Are they threats? No, Admiral. They're opportunities. The galaxy we knew was just the beginning. There's an entire universe of evolved consciousness waiting for us to join them. As Admiral Voss watched the enhanced humans returning to their ships, she realized that humanity's transformation was far from complete. They had become something that could survive and thrive among the stars, but more than that, they had become the vanguard of a new age of cosmic evolution. The war that had begun with humanity fighting for its right to exist among the stars had ended with humanity leading the galaxy toward transcendence itself, and this was only the beginning. In the depths of space, the Genesis began its journey toward the galactic rim, carrying the first enhanced humans toward contact with civilizations that had mastered evolution long before Earth's sun had ignited. Behind them, thousands of worlds continued their own transformations, each one contributing to a growing network of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. The age of imposed limitations was ending. The age of infinite possibility had begun. And Marcus Chen, the soldier who had refused to die quietly in a forgotten medical bay, sailed among the stars as the herald of humanity's cosmic destiny, carrying the blood of ancient wisdom toward a future that had no limits except those imposed by imagination itself. The galaxy would never be the same, neither would humanity. Both had evolved beyond their origins into something magnificent,